Mr. Us there, he's also very skeptical of this possible ceasefire. How does Russia intend to enforce this ceasefire given the reports and the ongoing violations on the front lines, especially the ones that, Mr. Us had identified right there?
True, President Zelensky said that violations are being committed by the Russian side. According to him, about 400 artillery strikes and about a few drone strikes here and there. And of course, I think this is true because it's very hard to stabilize a ceasefire in such a very short notice. And on the other hand, the Russian Ministry of Defense as well has documented Ukrainian violations of the ceasefire. So it's basically reciprocal. And who started the violations, of course, it cannot be really documented because we have to take into account that the entire front line between Russia and Ukraine runs for about over 1,500 kilometers. So that's a huge piece of land that cannot be adequately monitored by everyone. And of course, there is an absolute absence of trust between the Russian and the Ukrainian sides. So of course, we cannot attest to the credence or the truthfulness of the statements on either side. There is, of course, a margin of falsehoods that are propagated by both. However, I do see that it is within the vested interest of Ukraine to pursue any trajectory or roadmap that will lead to a cessation of hostilities and a long-term peace in Ukraine. Let's be realistic. This conflict will never be resolved definitively by the way Trump is managing it, because basically he's not taking the historical grievances of both sides into account.
So concessions have to be made, basically, to reach a deal.
Yes, but so far, the party that is required to make more concessions because of the situation on the battlefield and because of the behavior of the Trump administration is the Ukrainian side. Bankova cannot count on the White House anymore. Trump does not view Ukraine as an ally. He hardly believes even in the European security structure that has been erected after the World War II, NATO and whatnot. He is not really interested in investing in that anymore. And he does not see Russia as a historical enemy of the United States as previous administrations have done. So that's the problem that the Ukrainians have to reckon with. And unfortunately, despite what happened in the White House and the notorious summit between Trump and Zelensky that ended with Trump kicking Zelensky out of the White House, the Ukrainians failed to grasp that the United States of Trump is not the United States of Biden and Obama or even the first Trump administration. He does not view Russia as an enemy. So you can take a deal that will preserve whatever remains of Ukraine, a country that has been shattered and destroyed by war. What Mr. Us has mentioned about the very tragic events that happened, whether in Sumy or in Dnipro or other cities where children died due to missile strikes, this suffering needs to end. And at the end of the day, it has been proven rather definitively that no matter how much military aid Ukraine will receive, they will not be able to inflict a battlefield defeat on Russia. They will not be able to retrieve all the territories that Russia has occupied. If anything, Russia is advancing inside Ukraine now, whether in Pokrovsk, in Kupiansk, even in Sumy itself, beyond Kursk and inside Russia. So the situation is not on the side of the Ukrainians at the moment, and the Europeans cannot plug the gap of the absence of U.S. support. The Europeans do not have a sufficient military industrial capacity to supply their own needs and Ukraine's need in a war where Ukraine is fighting the second largest and strongest army in the world. So it's really inconceivable to think that way.
Yes.
So I think that peace, there is a chance for peace now, even though it's not a just peace. It might not even be sustainable, but even a short-term peace is better than a never-ending war.
Okay, Mr. Us, you heard Mr. Osman there talking about the idea that, the Ukrainians are probably going to have to give the biggest concessions. But does Kyiv believe that Washington's potential concessions on Crimea reflect a shifting U.S. priority over Ukrainian sovereignty? And what do you think is the fate of the war would be if the U.S. did withdraw from mediating a resolution? You've heard Dr. Osman also talk about the idea of military aid and military supplies from the U.S.
Absolutely agree with Dr. Osman that Europe is not ready, and that's the main problem. Because initially, the main problem of Europe that after the end of the Second World War, Europe decided to spend more money on their security, being sure that the United States of America always can come and help them in any threat. But what do we see now? The United States of America said that they will not help to Europe. Furthermore, they even talk about Greenland. So it means that Europe could not even receiving support from US. Europe could receive attack from US, attack on their territory of the European Union country then. So that's why, as for me, the main question for Europe to really rebuild its military production. For 3 years, even practically we have the fourth year of full-scale war, Europe increased production of weapons only at 30%. Yes. I think that they should do more. And as for concession from Ukraine side, we are ready to recognize each part of our territory, including Crimea, not only Ukraine. For example, our partners, and not only Europe, actually. We should understand that we have such a